we're going to get started here in a couple minutes. Hopefully you can all see my beautiful PowerPoint presentation that they gave me today. But again, we're here to talk about HPE, some hypervisor solutions, specifically on Azure Stack. So this is part of our Vista Talks Tech webinar. So we're really excited to be able to get a chance to share with you today. We'll do some quick introductions. Actually, pop here. You can go through the agenda here while we're letting everyone in here. But today, what we're here to talk about is obviously first welcoming everyone out here. Thank you again for our sponsor for this webinar, which is HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And we have Eric with us today from HPE, who has been a Microsoft aficionado for a number of years. I'll let him share that in a little bit. And then we're going to talk about Azure Stack. We're going to talk about HPE Solutions. And also we want to make sure that we make this pretty interactive. So if you guys have questions, just pop them on in the Q&A section here. And we have some moderators that'll get those in front of us. We have some things that we definitely go through today, but we want to make this very customer centric. So if you guys have questions, please ask them and we'll get those back to you. And then, we'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A. And then also we have Nick from Lego Masters, who's going to be doing a pretty cool presentation, and we got a chance to talk with him a little before this, and I think it's going to be pretty neat. So we are excited about that. And again, we're here to talk about Azure Stack, HCI, just a brief slide about what we're going to talk about, but I'm not a big PowerPoint guy. I know Eric's not either. We want to really make this interactive with you guys. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're just going to have a chance to chat with you guys about the solution, what we're looking at, and we'll have some fun from there. Is that good with everyone? Yes. Okay, cool. So Eric, if you could just take a second and introduce yourself, I'd appreciate it. You're muted. Wouldn't be a real Zoom meeting without adding that in there. But you're supposed to be the tech specialist here.
Yes, good times. Even I can double mute myself. So I'm Eric Bernard. I'm obviously with Hewlett Packard Enterprise, since you already told everyone that. And
Sorry.
I've been working. Oh, it's great. I've been working in the Microsoft ecosystem for probably 30 years, and I've been with Hewlett Packard Enterprise for over 25 years now. So there you go. There's my little bit of an introduction.
Yes. So you know a thing or two, and you can check them out on LinkedIn, right? But today we're here to talk about Azure Stack, obviously, Eric. So can you just give people an overview? We have people on here that are probably very familiar with Azure Stack, and maybe people here that have maybe heard Azure but don't know what Stack means or how that functions together. So you can just give us a broad overview of what that solution looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting because Azure Stack, a lot of people think about it in one context or another, but it's really a family of products. At least it is today. That could have obviously changed in the future, but today it's a family of products. It's made up of Azure Stack Edge, Azure Stack Hub, and what we'll probably focus most of our time on today, Azure Stack HCI. Now, Azure Stack HCI is going to be where everything from an on-premise perspective in terms of the private cloud is going to coalesce for Microsoft. And Azure Stack Hub and Azure Stack Edge will start to leverage Azure Stack HCI as their underpinnings. And again, they could continue as products or kind of disappear as products. Now, fundamentally, Azure Stack HCI is a virtualization platform. Very similar in many ways to VMware. It is a general purpose platform for hosting virtual machines, but you can also host Kubernetes, containers, and so on and so forth on top of it. It's based on Windows Server technologies like the Server Core Operating System, Hyper-V is a hypervisor, storage spaces direct, and other Windows Server technologies. And then, of course, it goes beyond just the Windows Server and on-premise virtualization. Azure Stack HCI and even the Azure Stack family really integrate directly into Azure, right? So they take Azure and leverage it to provide a hybrid environment. And it is typically considered something that is, really cohesive and continually expanding and making Azure not just this cloud entity, but really extending that into the on-premise environment.
Okay. Yeah. So you hear Azure, you think just cloud, but it's nice that Azure Stack is something you have a little more control on and bringing, within your own data center on-prem. But what are some of the common use cases for Azure Stack HCI? Why would I use that versus anything else in the marketplace?
Well, that's a great question. I would say that probably one of the biggest areas that we're starting to see customers investigate Azure Stack HCI is around VMware and really eliminating or decreasing their reliance on VMware. Clearly, you know this, and I suspect everyone in our audience has heard some of the things that have been going on with the Broadcom acquisition, some of the licensing changes, subscriptions, cost increases, and so on and so forth. So these are
I've heard that once or twice, Eric. Once or twice.
Only once.
Yeah, once or twice today.
This is something today. This is something that's really driving customers to look elsewhere and find alternatives. And so that's one of the areas that Azure Stack HCI is really coming into play. And a lot of our customers are calling us and talking to us about this, talking to our partners about this, and wanting to get more information. So that's probably the first area. The second area is there's a lot of customers that are investing in cloud, no doubt about it. Azure is one of those premier cloud providers, and we see a lot of customers really putting their eggs into the Azure basket. So Azure Stack HCI ties into that very nicely because it really takes that ecosystem of Azure and gives you the same look and feel, the same types of capabilities. It even allows you to take some of those Azure services and pull those right down on premise and leverage them on premise and have less dependency on the cloud. Not no dependency, but less dependency for some of these applications and services. And then probably one of the other elements that customers are looking at, especially when they're looking at VMware alternatives, is they're looking at some of the competitors, the Microsoft. That could be AWS Outpost, that could be Google Anthos, and so on. And again, it really depends on where customers at, what they're trying to achieve. Are they looking at those specific clouds because they have an investment in that space already? Are they already working with Google? Are they already working with AWS? Or are they working with Microsoft? Now, they all have these kind of hybridized on-premise elements that they can work with. But one thing that I'd like to note is that Microsoft has been doing this on-prem for a really, really long time. The on-prem elements from AWS and from Google, these are relatively new. But again, not one size fits all. So really you have to look at it, see what fits your specific use case.
It makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you mentioned a lot of people looking at Azure Stack because they're looking at, lowering their VMware footprint just due to some of the price increases. But, it's VMware is still a, very high-end product. It's great. Maybe people don't want to get rid of it completely, or they can't get rid of it completely. Is there another use case for using VMware with the Azure Stack HCI? Can they play together nicely? Are they just sworn enemies and won't talk to each other? What would you say to someone that is kind of looking at a mixed type of environment?
Yeah, there's probably several reasons why customers might need a mixed environment. I have customers that already have deep commitments to VMware. They're prepaid. They're not going anywhere. So VMware is going to be in their environment for the foreseeable future. But that said, there are some things about Azure Stack HCI that make it very interesting, even for those VMware customers. For example, one of the services you can pull down to Azure Stack HCI from the Azure cloud is AVD, or Azure Virtual Desktop. This is an Azure Stack HCI exclusive service, right? So you can't run it on top of VMware. So for a customer that maybe has been using AVD in the cloud, in the public cloud, and has been having some challenges, maybe around latency, and they would like to pull those virtual desktops down and run them on premise, this is a perfect solution for that. And it allows them to continue to run their enterprise applications on VMware and pull that AVD down and leverage those virtual desktops on premises. One of the other areas that we've seen is, customers are looking to rapidly exit maybe a data center because they've got some leasing issues or otherwise need to retire that facility. And for that, Microsoft does offer some additional options as well. So maybe you're going to use Azure Stack HCI for something like AVD. Maybe you're looking at your VMware environment and you're like, wow, we really need to get off this, or we need to move it somewhere else, or we've got this aging hardware. I mean, there's all kinds of little areas that come into play where you're looking for options and ways out. One of the ways out that Microsoft provides is the Azure VMware solution. Now, this is VMware, and this is surprising to a lot of folks, but this is VMware that runs in the Azure cloud. So you can literally take running workloads on premise, running on VMware, and move them directly to the Azure cloud without any types of conversions. And you
Well,
can
that's interesting.
you can manage this through the Azure portal using traditional tools that you would otherwise use to manage your VMware solution.
So it's kind of a perfect marriage because you're managing VMware through Azure. I am assuming that's probably not super cheap though.
No, that's very expensive. But one of the great things that customers look at when they're expanding their Azure ecosystem and looking at things like Azure Stack HCI, managing different products like Azure Stack HCI through the Azure portal, Microsoft does have another option there for customers running VMware, and that's something called Azure Arc for VMware. Azure Arc for VMware allows you to attach Azure to your VMware implementation and manage VMware through the Azure portal. Similar to that Azure VMware solution, but in this case, your VMware elements stay on premise. Now, I
Okay.
mentioned that because this is key to how users interact with Azure Stack HCI. They also have this concept of Azure Arc. And Azure Arc is a service that pulls in many different elements of Azure and allows you to integrate those Azure elements with your on-premise environment, and not just your on-premise environment, but also environments that may be running in other clouds. So maybe you have a Windows virtual machine that's running in AWS. Well, you can manage that still with Azure Arc from the Azure portal. So it's a very interesting area.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. But speaking of management, right? If you're looking at bringing in an Azure Stack, and you've used to working with VMware or Hyper-V or any of these other solutions out there, what's the learning curve like to be able to bring this up in your environment and start using it? Because this is complicated stuff. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. I would say that. Well, first of all, for the VMware customers, managing Azure Stack HCI, managing Hyper-V, it's different, right? It's just
Yeah.
different than what you do with VMware. But if you were to look at Hyper-V and you were to take someone that's new to Hyper-V and have them sit down in front of a console and say, hey, create a new virtual machine for me. Is this a difficult thing to do? No, this is very simple and very intuitive. Now, Hyper-V, in its traditional sense, uses numerous different on-premise tools like the Hyper-V Manager, the Failover Cluster Manager, and other traditional Windows tools. And you can use those with Azure Stack HCI as well. So if you're managing Hyper-V today and you're thinking about transitioning to Azure Stack HCI, those same tools that you're using today will work going forward. However, Microsoft is now taking many of the operational aspects of Hyper-V in the form of Azure Stack HCI and pushing those into more modern tools like Windows Admin Center and, more importantly, the Azure portal. So the Azure portal is really becoming kind of that center of the universe for Microsoft when it comes to management. And the ability to manage these types of environments using Azure Arc and expanding other Azure services such as Azure Monitor, Azure Sentinel, Azure Site Recovery, right down to that on-premise environment is really, really powerful.
Yeah. So we're talking about a lot of, cloud related things, right? You got your Google clouds and your Amazon clouds and your Microsoft clouds and your Cumulonimbus clouds and all of these kind of clouds, right? So what's stopping me from just taking all of my work clouds and just throwing them out to the cloud and managing them there? Is that a good idea, bad idea? Obviously, it kind of depends, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I work for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I'm biased, right? You should keep it all on-prem. We still sell hardware.
The cloud is terrible.
The cloud's a terrible place. No, the reality is that at HPE, we absolutely believe that not only is the hybrid approach the right approach for most customers, but it's going to be the dominant approach for the foreseeable future. Yes, will there be more and more workloads that move to the cloud? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But what's driving customers to keep certain workloads on premise? I would say it's probably three different things. Number one, regulation and compliance issues. A lot of companies deal with regulations and compliance on a regular basis. They need to ensure who has physical access, who has logical access, and then they also need physical boundaries secure, and geographical boundaries need to be taken into account in many different cases as well. The other element is network and cloud availability. If I'm working in an environment such as a manufacturing facility or a factory, and I need to ensure that if the network goes down to the rest of my environment, the WAN goes down, that I can continue to function. I can't have a hard dependency on the cloud. So if I'm using virtual desktops to manage an environment in a manufacturing facility and Azure goes down or I can't access Azure, that's a major problem. So I need those elements local. And then the last thing is application latency. There are some applications that require extremely low latency. And when I put my endpoints or workloads in the cloud and have to have them interact with these on-premise systems, that latency can really pose a problem. So those are probably the three top reasons for keeping these, certain applications on-premise.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of people that have jumped to the cloud too early without doing the proper research to make sure, should I move this workload to the cloud or not? And bringing it back can be pretty pricey. So, I guess a shameless plug for Vista. We can help have those conversations. And hey, is this a good thing to push out to the cloud or not? What would the ramifications of this decision be? So I think there's some great points you made there. But going back to I guess the top of our conversation, a lot of people are looking at Azure HCI as one of the options because some of the pricing has gone up on their current subscriptions. What does that look like from a Microsoft standpoint? Am I going to be in the same boat a year from now where, everything with that hypervisor goes crazy off the roof? I mean, obviously you can't predict the future, but or else I would have bet on my Tigers to make it to the playoffs this year and been really well off.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. But, anyway, so moving forward, like what does the pricing model look like for Azure?
Well, no, it's great you asked that question. There's a lot of folks out there that start to hear Microsoft and licensing and pricing, and their skin starts to crawl. If you've been in this industry for any period of time, you've probably heard someone say you need specialized training just to be able to understand Microsoft licensing.
Eric, that person that has said that may have been myself. I'm just going to be honest with you.
I suspect it was you and a whole line of others behind you. Yeah, no doubt. But oftentimes the complexity is born out of a reasonable rationale, and that would be creating customer choice and trying to provide a number of different options. And the scenario here with Azure Stack HCI is no different. Their default approach is kind of an a la carte subscription-based approach, right? You decide what it is you want, the capabilities you need, and you're going to pay a monthly subscription fee for that type of capability. Now, subscription is kind of a bad word to a lot of folks, depending on your position.
Saying the S word here on camera. I don't know if we'll be able to put this out.
That's right. But for other customers, right, that maybe don't want a traditional subscription, right, this monthly type of subscription, maybe they have an enterprise agreement. Now, if you're a larger customer, you might have an enterprise agreement with Microsoft. And Microsoft, for those larger customers that have enterprise agreements and software assurance, they're going to offer a pretty interesting feature-rich option for licensing. If you're a VMware customer today and you use Windows Server VMs as workloads, no doubt you are familiar with the Windows Data Center licensing option, right? Where you basically determine how many cores you have in your VMware host, and you need a licensed Windows Server Data Center for all those cores. The same thing holds true for a Hyper-V based solution like Azure Stack HCI. If you want to run Windows Server Guest, you got to have that license. But for an enterprise customer, Microsoft allows you to convert those Windows Center Data Center cores into Azure Stack HCI cores. And by doing so, they're going to waive numerous monthly fees or subscription type fees that you would otherwise pay for. The default fee for Azure Stack HCI is $10 per physical core per month. But if you're using this enterprise agreement with software assurance, that's waived. In addition, not only is that waived, but you get to run an unlimited number of Windows Server guests. And of course, they never charge you directly for Linux guests. You just pay whatever licensing fees you have to that Linux provider distribution option, and you go forward. But in addition to these Windows Server guests and all the Linux guests that you want to run, they also will provide you with no cost access to Azure Kubernetes services. Right? So you don't pay any fees, and you can use AKS, Azure Kubernetes Services, again, no additional cost. And then last but not least, to kind of top it all off, they also provide you with extended security updates for your Windows systems that are running on top of Azure Stack HCI. Now, that covers kind of the default, that covers the large customers, but what about for small and medium customers? There hasn't been anything there that really entices them or provides them real value. So Microsoft recently introduced a special OEM license. So through an OEM like HPE, you can now obtain these licenses that are fixed price, fixed cost, they're perpetual, they live with the hardware for as long as the hardware is functional in your environment. And what you get is something very similar to that enterprise agreement customer. So for a fixed price of about $729 a core, you will get not only the Azure Stack HCI platform, you'll also get that Windows Server data center licensing capability with unlimited number of virtual machines and no additional cost for AKS consumption. So you get it all kind of wrapped up, fixed price, perpetual.
So while some are moving away from perpetual to subscription, Azure is moving, they still have a subscription, but providing a perpetual solution.
Well, this is really born out of that VMware decision, right? They saw the decision made, they heard the feedback from customers, and they said, no, we're going to solve that problem. And so this is the option.
I love that. And you talked a lot about that with flexibility for your customers. Let's give them what they want. Yeah, it may be complex to figure out how to get that through and, get all the, switches flipped right. But once you get that solution, it's pretty customizable and it can help you save some money. Yeah. Talking about, the features then on that aspect too, right? Are there any major features that I would be either losing or gaining if I move away from like a VMware to an Azure that I should be aware of in my consideration process? Anything that I'd have to change mentally about how I do things or re-engineer how we handle some of our workloads?
It's a very good question. It's a bit of a challenge to answer because the answer is going to be very specific to each individual customer, right? If I said, well, what features are you using in VMware, right? The answer to that question really plays deeply into how I might respond in terms of how you might have to change. Microsoft does offer a lot of comparable feature sets, but it is not the same. VMware is and has been considered best in class, especially if you look at the total portfolio of what they offer for an on-premise virtualization environment. But the question that I often ask customers is, how much of that are you using? Do you need that whole? For some customers, absolutely, they need it all. They're using it all. And for those customers, they're probably going to stay on VMware regardless of what the cost is. But for other customers that are really using the fundamental nature of the virtualization platform, in this case, they're not going to lose any features, right? They're going to get the same type of features: virtual hard disks, virtual machines, integrated Kubernetes options, live migration capabilities, and so on. They're going to get all those fundamental features that they've been using with VMware forever. Some of the advanced stuff, some of the more well-rounded integrated stuff that they have, maybe it's not quite the same. Maybe you've got to use Azure add-ons for that in terms of Azure services and cloud services.
That makes sense. But, looking at, again, VMware, Azure / Hyper-V, there's a lot of, there's a dog. Hi, dog. They're both full-featured solutions, right? So, there's a lot of, other smaller startups, that are just kind of getting in the game. But, whether you go with VMware, whether you go with Azure, Hyper-V, any of that stuff, you're going to get, a lot of options. Correct?
Absolutely. Tons.
Oh, well, so it's going on that, right? We've talked pretty much exclusively about Microsoft and that on here, but you don't work for Microsoft, right? You're
That's
an
true.
HP guy through and through, and that's why it's nice that we can talk, not just about that, but a bit high level. But what else does HPE have to offer in their ecosystem in this space? What are some other things that we could potentially look at? And then just a quick reminder while you're coming up with your answer there, if there's any other questions that you guys want to pop in, we're going to go to a Q&A session here in a couple seconds. So I just want to make sure that, any questions that you guys have, we're able to get them answered. Well, we got Eric, and his dog here to go through that with us.
The dog always injecting a little fun into our lives.
Yes, you got to. The beautiful dog, by the way.
Thank you. He must have heard the mailman, and now he's moved positions. Okay.
Yes.
So back to your question. So Microsoft, one of the things I'd like to point out is that Microsoft's approach to Azure Stack HCI is really kind of a tiered program. The two tiers that HPE supports are validated nodes and integrated systems. So validated nodes are great. They define a collection of not only different platforms that we offer, like the DL380, Gen 11, maybe a DL360, Gen 10 Plus, right? So one of the various platforms that we offer. But they also offer a combination of different types of components, right? So anything you can think of, really, different types of memory, whether it's speeds or configurations or capacities, storage types, whether it's NVMe, traditional SSD, spinning media, and so on. So lots of different components, and these are all tested in a very rigorous manner using a definition that's specified by Microsoft. And we test all this out to make sure it all works together. And then we publish it in a white paper, and you can find that on the HPE site, but we publish it in a white paper. And validated nodes are great because they give you the ultimate in flexibility and the number of different combinations that you can put together. Now, they're just sold as components, right? So you can buy it off the shelf. DL380 is an example, put the components you need into it and deploy Azure Stack HCI on top of it. But if you want something a little more rigid, a little bit more well-defined, something that's been tested and used even more than a validated node, that's where this concept of an integrated system comes in. And the integrated systems are regularly tested, a little bit more limited in terms of what we allow you to put in them, but you also, with that, get an enhanced support experience. Now, regardless of which one of these tiers you might select, we do offer tons of flexibility. So whether it's the form factor, the platform that you want, the processors, the memory, network types, storage, GPUs, so on and so forth, right? We offer lots of flexibility. We don't have these little t-shirt sizes that you've got to really fit into and say, it's got a little too much of this or a little too, not enough of that, right? That type of thing. We allow a lot of flexibility. And when acquiring Azure Stack HCI from HPE, we also offer customer choice on how you can go about acquiring it. So if you are an organization that does traditional CapEx purchases, right? You want to buy your equipment outright today because you've got some budget. That's great. We can definitely do that. But if you're not that type of customer, maybe you're moving to more of an OpEx approach. You're
going to talk about GreenLake, aren't you, Eric?
How'd you know? I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah, all of us HP Truers, we know that GreenLake's got to come up. It's part of the metrics that you have to hit, right?
We must say it at least twice. So I'm going to say it once. GreenLake. We do have GreenLake, HPE GreenLake, which is basically a contract or lease-based situation where if you're purchasing a lot of gear, or maybe you want to move to that OpEx approach, you can leverage HPE GreenLake to acquire your Azure Stack HCI. We'll meter the solution so that you're only paying for what you're actually using in the solution. We have some customers that say, you know what, today I need 4 nodes of Azure Stack HCI, but in the next 6 months, we're pretty sure we're going to need 8. So we're going to grow, we're going to increase, and so on. And so we can actually put all 8 nodes on premise today and only have the customer pay for a subset of that right now. And as they start to grow into that additional capacity we've already got on site, then we start to charge them for that. So it's a pretty cool option for those types of customers. Now,
yeah, it definitely hits that sweet spot when people have that specific use case, right? And then Vista, we offer leasing options too, which can give you that same OpEx type of solution. Sorry,
Right.
I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's great. And just like Vista, and Vista's a great, Vista IT is a great partner of HPE. So
The
just like
best.
Vista IT, the best. Yes. How did you know that? I just saw
I'm
the
just good like
metrics
that,
this
and I
morning.
got it
You're the
on. I
best.
got it recorded now.
You have it recorded. You're the best. Um, we also offer professional services and advisory services. So no matter what your needs are, right, when it comes to the Azure ecosystem and beyond, I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
have some of the premier services capabilities of VMware as well. But regardless of what your services needs are, we have a full lifecycle suite of services that we can offer up. And we do that with a number of our partners like Vista IT as well. And then,
Absolutely.
I've purely focused so far, on Azure Stack HCI, and we've talked a lot about that. But under our GreenLake banner, from like a services perspective, right? And this is just a small subsection of what we do. We also offer tons of other options for customers that are looking to keep infrastructure on premise for one reason or another, whatever that is. So we've got HPE GreenLake for Private Cloud Business Edition, HPE GreenLake for Private Cloud Enterprise, HPE GreenLake for block storage, for backup and recovery and disaster recovery, and all kinds
Mm-hmm.
of stuff around AI and ML. I mean, we have tons of
All
offerings.
the
So
acronyms.
that's right. Yeah, I didn't even get into the acronym part. I could throw down right now.
I'm sure you could. We'd be here all day talking
And
about tech
everyone would
acronyms.
be lost on acronyms.
Yeah,
So,
no, you guys have definitely had some, like Electra MP. That's a really cool solution that's come out
oh
pretty
yeah,
recently as well too. We could get into, but we won't today.
yeah. So we offer a ton of stuff, whether it's Azure Stack HCI, or you're interested in another area where you can manage and provide value to your on-premise
Yeah,
infrastructure.
I know. I mean, you can get Nutanix through HPE,
Oh, for sure.
VMware Solutions, like you were mentioning earlier, DHCI or Distributed Hyperconverged, which is
Yeah.
we've had a lot of customers love that because it's a cheaper way to get a similar hyperconverged experience, or PCBE, which I still don't know what that is, but keep throwing around. It's constantly learning here in this environment. So, with that, I don't know if we've had any other questions come through, or if moderators want to throw that up. But in closing, before we get Nick on here to show us some cool Lego stuff, is there anything else that you'd like to say or recommend to people that are wanting to look more into the solution?
Well, visit our website, hpe.com. Do a quick search for Azure Stack HCI, and you're going to find a ton of information.
Perfect. I love it. And obviously, we're Vista here. We're here to help. Our goal is to give you a broad approach, because we want to give you a need or give you a solution that's gonna fill your need, instead of just trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. So we're here to help. Feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to me directly, or any of our sales team here, and we'd love to help you out with that. So unless I'll wait a couple seconds to see if anyone has any other questions that I'd like to throw through Eric. If not, I'm guessing you just answered them all because you're just that good.
Oh boy.
So, without further ado, then I guess we'll bring on our good friend Nick to talk about some cool Lego stuff.
I guess it's time.
It is time. Let's go.
Hello, hello. All right. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Nathan. Appreciate it. And I'm excited to bring you guys some Lego fun. So just to give you a little bit of an introduction, my name is Nick. I am a full-time Lego content creator and professional Lego artist. So that basically just means I get to play with Lego as my job, which is obviously pretty darn fantastic.
It's a dream job there, Nick.
Yes, exactly. No, literally living out my childhood dream. I do want to throw out quickly before we kind of dive into the presentation, if you will, that I actually like my favorite form of doing content is live streaming. I live stream on Twitch, and that's where I do a lot of my creative Lego building or building Lego sets. So I'm very, very used to like being interrupted on the fly. If you are not comfortable coming on camera or unmuting, that is totally cool. You can just throw a message in the chat, and I will be keeping an eye on that while I'm presenting here. So if you have questions while I'm going around doing stuff, you want me to show you something closer, talk about a build, make a suggestion, whatever it may be, I'm totally down for it. I will say it does help if you throw your hand up after you've typed the question in chat, just because there's a little bit more of a visual cue for that. But yeah, otherwise I'll just kind of get started with some Lego fun with y'all. So to start, how did I get to being a Lego master / Lego professional? I honestly started building when I was a really, really young kid. I remember building my first Lego set when I was 3 or 4 years old. at my grandmother's house. And I just loved the way these tiny little plastic pieces that were all, slopes and squares and different shapes or whatever could come together to make something recognizable. And you could be like, hey, that's a cute little truck or a spaceship or a car or a house or whatever it might be. So I was just really, really into like exploring those pieces, building my own creations, just loved doing it. And I was also extremely lucky that as I was growing up, the internet was kind of, stepping into its, its own. And there was an amazing community of builders on a particular website called Flickr, where people were posting absolutely phenomenal, like custom builds. And right around the time where I might have lost interest, going into high school and university, I luckily saw that people were building at all ages. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I want to keep doing this then. So that kept me building and eventually led me into the world of content creation. I discovered Twitch, started sharing my passion for building through that. And that slowly over time led to lots of awesome opportunities to help make this a career for me. And definitely one of the biggest highlights of my career so far was the opportunity to compete on a televised building competition. That show is called Lego Masters. You can think of it like MasterChef or the Great British Bake Off. We were in teams of 2, and every week we were assigned a different challenge and had a limited amount of time to come up with the best build that we could for those challenges. So I actually have a little like reel here to kind of highlight our journey through Lego Masters. You might, already have an idea of how the result turned out, but I'm excited to show you guys some of the cool stuff we got to build while we were on the show. So our first build, and my teammate on the show was named Stacey. She's a friend of mine, fellow Canadian, fellow content creator. Our first show or build on the show was to build a spaceship that represented us as a team. And the entire weight of the spaceship had to be built off this tiny little white module they gave us, which is located at the back of our ship. So the entire weight of the build is engineered to like work off of that little block at the back. So we built this like fun purple spaceship that represented us as a team, which was really fun. Then we actually got to tackle a Jurassic World theme challenge where we had to have dinosaurs creating chaos, but in a non-violent way. So we actually decided to have a Triceratops crashing Halloween night while some kids are out trick-or-treating. And we got to use these cool practical special effects. We had these like sparklers. So the Triceratops is knocking over an electrical pole, causing all sorts of chaos among the trick-or-treaters. Our third challenge, which was definitely one of the most wild, was to build a bull rider that could actually ride and hold on to a mechanical bull. So we had to engineer the build to be as strong as possible and hold on to the Lego attached to the mechanical bull so that it could ride it for as long as possible. So our build managed to make it all the way to level 9. It was the second longest lasting build of all 12 teams that competed in that challenge. So we were really, really proud of how long it held for, and it was definitely fun watching it explode in a pile of bricks as well. Our fourth challenge was to build a dream treehouse. And what made this particular challenge challenging was that they brought out real trees, and these trees had no actual Lego connection points in them. So it was entirely up to us to figure out how to engineer a way to have our build be suspended within the tree. So what we did is we built the facade of our Lego brick treehouse, and we would build it on the table and then bring it over to the tree, measure where all of the branches would come through it, and then reinforce all of those areas, allowing us to have this kind of cool look where it looks like it's really just built right into the tree. And it was definitely a super fun build to bring to life. And it was the first challenge that we ended up winning on the show. The fifth challenge, and definitely the most adorable, was a dog show where they actually brought real dogs out onto the set. Each team got assigned one. And then we had to recreate that dog to the best of our ability and walk it down the runway. So because we got the corgi, we wanted to incorporate one of the most iconic features of the corgi, which is its adorable butt wiggle. So we actually motorized a little way for its butt to wiggle while it was on the runway, which was super duper fun to do. Our sixth challenge was to build a pirate ship with a really cool and unique story. So our story was that this pirate ship crash landed on this mysterious island, and it ended up being an island home to a bunch of magical monkeys. And the monkeys ended up taking over the ship, putting the pirates to work, and had to decorate it all out in sort of a jungle theme. But what made this challenge extra chaotic was we had to incorporate small explosives into each of our builds. And then Will Arnett, the host of the show, got to blow up each ship one at a time, which he absolutely loved getting to do. Our seventh challenge was to build a fantastical camp. So like a camp really taking that fantasy aspect to the next level. So we came up with this concept of Camp Cloud, where kids could go up into the clouds and hang out and play with all sorts of magical creatures, whether it was going on like a little roller coaster ride with leprechauns, they could ride unicorns, they could go zip lining with the Tooth Fairy into the windows of kids' bedrooms to give them their money. It was just a really fun, fantastical concept that would allow kids to just have an awesome day hanging out with some of their favorite magical creatures. And each build had to focus on having motorized features, which is why we have our like center platform there spinning in multiple directions. Our 8th challenge, and definitely one of our team's hardest, because this one actually almost got us sent home, was to build a playable mini golf hole. And we got a little ambitious with our concept, but the idea was that the ball represented a mouse, and it would have to sneak through a wall to get past the cats to get to the actual hole. So we had a little conveyor belt that would bring the ball all the way up to the top of the build, then drop it through like a plinko board or pegboard type thing, and then come out the hole. The only thing was we didn't actually have time to test it, so we didn't know if the build would actually work. But luckily, it worked without a hitch, and it was such a fun hole to build that it saved us from getting eliminated. Our 9th challenge was to build a very strong, very tall castle that would actually be subjected to being hit by a giant Lego wrecking ball. And we also had to theme the castle around a minifigure that each team got. So we got an Arctic warrior, which is why we have this Arctic castle, and it's under attack from a lava monster, which is why we went ahead and filled it with all sorts of red and orange bricks, because we knew that it'd be pretty impossible to stop that giant Lego wrecking ball. So we're like, let's embrace that explosion and have it filled with tons of fun colors, so it looks really, really cool when it gets wrecked. Our 10th challenge was to recreate a scene from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This was super duper exciting to do. Not every day you get to do something Marvel themed officially. And we ended up getting a scene from Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Warriors, where he's sort of in the big final battle moment. So we had to figure out how to suspend him in the air, recreate those epic waves, the monster itself. And we were really, really happy with how accurate we were able to recreate that. It was just a super duper fun build to bring to life. Our 11th challenge, we were actually paired up in teams. So we were in teams of 4 now instead of teams of 2. And we had to build a go-kart that could actually drive and race around the track. So they actually gave us an electric go-kart with some Lego pieces attached to the strategic parts of the frame. And we had to engineer a way to cover most of the body of the car, which was not easy to do, but we did figure it out. And it was just really, really fun to kind of spec it out with all sorts of details and such. Our 12th challenge, and this was the semi-final of the series, was to actually use water to make Lego move. So essentially, it was a water fountain challenge. So we were given pumps and hoses and had to figure out how to use those to get Lego to move. So for our particular build, we came up with this concept of a sandcastle that had been turned into a home for crabs. So we have a water wheel here spinning to move the crab left and right. And then we also have a water wheel spinning, waving a white flag, because the story was that the crabs didn't want to lose their home to the waves that were coming in. So they were trying to surrender to the oncoming waves so that they could hopefully keep their adorable little crabby home. And we just packed it filled with all sorts of crabs and other details. And luckily the judges loved that build enough to get us all the way to the finale, which is where we actually had 24 hours to build pretty much anything we wanted. So me and Stacey, being so fond of our childhoods, decided to build a life-size version of our childhood bookshelf. So we filled it with all of the things that we loved growing up, whether it was storybooks, comic books, Lego drawers like the ones that I have in the background here. We built video games into it as well. So we had a TV that could like turn on and off with a gaming controller beside it. And then we had it coming to life too. So there's a comic book character coming out of the side of the shelf. You have lots of minifigures kind of running around, causing some chaos too. And some of the builds that we had done previously throughout the show coming to life throughout the build too. It was just so much fun creating such iconic details from our childhoods, like, a teddy bear, an Etch-a-Sketch, a skateboard. We just loved building it all. And luckily the judges did too, which led us to being chosen as the winners of Lego Masters, which is what got each of us one of these awesome trophies. So yeah, it was a super duper fun experience. Would have never imagined playing with Lego as a kid would lead me to going to competing and winning a televised building competition. So, and again, if you have any questions for that, don't be afraid to throw them in the chat. Would love to hear them. Otherwise, guys, I'm just going to hang out and take you through a little bit of our studio here. We have some pretty cool builds around here. So I'm going to switch to this camera here. And this camera actually follows us around, which is really fun. So I'm going to start with walking over this way because I have some of my favorite Lego sets of all time over here. I love video games in particular. I'm a big fan of them. And of course, you can't, have all these awesome video games that we do now without where they came from. So we have lots of classic Lego sets. Of amazing retro video games. So you have like a little Pac-Man arcade, which is super cool. It's actually got a little crank on there that you can make move so that Pac-Man goes around chasing some of the ghosts, which is really, really adorable. You got an Atari 2600 here, which is a really phenomenal set. And you can actually slide open the top and it has a little scene of a minifigure playing an Atari in an old school 80s basement, which just looks amazing. And you get to build little scenes of some of the most iconic games. So you have a scene from Adventure, Asteroids, and Centipede there, which is awesome. You can even put the cartridges for each of those games into the Atari, which looks amazing. You've of course got some classic Super Mario stuff like Bowser, the Question Block, the Piranha Plant, and then my favorite Lego set of all time is the NES. And the reason for that is that I've actually enjoyed building Lego consoles myself. I built a PS5, an Xbox, and a Nintendo Switch. And it was really, really awesome to see like Lego's official take on them doing that themselves. And the console is actually my favorite part. It's super duper accurate. You can actually plug in your controllers here, which is amazing. And it's got all the various ports that you would expect to see on it. But what really blew me away was the fact that you could open up the cartridge slot here, and you can actually eject the cartridges and insert them by opening them and sliding them in and out. It's just such a cool feature that they managed to engineer a way for that to work. And getting to build like the engineering behind that is so, so fascinating. And as if that wasn't cool enough, they even included a little Easter egg here, having a hidden section which represents a microscale version of one of the underground levels in the original Super Mario Bros. Game, which is just phenomenal stuff. So really, really fun. And then the console itself isn't the only cool part. You actually had a TV with it, and it's got like turning dials. But what really makes the TV stand out is there's another little like crank wheel on the side. And you can actually watch Mario scrolling across the level. The whole like TV kind of spins. Crazy cool stuff. Definitely go check it out online if you haven't seen it before. It is ridiculously fun. And then I think I froze my camera somewhere there. So let me just grab that back and we'll continue along here. On the top shelf, if you look up here, you can actually see mini versions of all of our Lego Masters builds. Unfortunately, almost all of the builds that we do on Lego Masters actually get torn down because we actually need to use those bricks for future challenges. The only one that is actually still around is our finale build that's on display in Legoland New York, if you ever decide to go and check that out. And so you can see that in real life. But these are some mini scale versions I built so that I'd have them at home as well. We got some Lego Fortnite sets around. Lego Fortnite just is a newer game, and they've done some really cool stuff with some of those characters. Another one of my all-time favorite builds is the Lego brick patent. The Lego brick, of course, there's a reason it became the most famous like plastic building brick. They weren't actually the first people to try to do a plastic brick building system. But what revolutionized the Lego brick, because originally you could just stack pieces, but they would actually fall over if you tried to move them. The tube and stud system is what revolutionized the brick. So this was meant to be a build as a kind of an homage to the genius of the original Lego brick design. And it's like a 3D version of the Lego brick pattern, which was really, really fun to bring to life. Some other cool builds we have here are like our Lego Movie logo build. I actually got to have this on display, not only at the premiere of the Lego Movie in Toronto, my hometown. This actually ended up being on display at the Lego House for a year, which was really cool. So I got to ship this build to the home of the brick, which is in Denmark. And it was on display there for people to check out in person for a year, which is really cool. We have some other cool characters here like Bob Ross. I'm sure a lot of you might have grown up, watching the art of Bob Ross. He actually became really iconic on Twitch in particular, in that they started streaming episodes of the Bob Ross show, and people just loved chilling and hanging out, watching Bob Ross. They would all chat together while they were watching it. Some people would even paint along with it, which is really cool. So I wanted to do a nice little homage to him. And then over here, we actually have some Lego sets that are throwbacks to some classic Lego sets. I have a feeling some of you probably grew up with classic space sets as well as some castle sets. So these three here are based on the classic space theme. And I'm going to bring this guy a little bit closer for y'all. This is based on a particular Lego set called the Galaxy Explorer. It's actually one of my all-time favorite Lego sets. I haven't even acquired the original yet, but I was very, very excited that for Lego's 90th anniversary recently, they came out with a modernized version of the Galaxy Explorer. And this thing is like incredibly well built. It looks very clean and simple, but the actual engineering behind like nailing all these angles and stuff and integrating features like disappearing landing gear is really, really impressive and was a delight to bring to life. And it just made for a great homage to a beautiful classic theme. And as if the set itself wasn't cool enough, they designed 2 alternate models for the set. So that's what you have back there and there. And so I bought 3 copies of the set, of course. I could build all 3 copies of this model. And then when it comes to classic castle, this set here is called the Lion Knight's Fortress. It was also released for the 90th anniversary of the Lego company. And this one's meant to be kind of an homage to a bunch of different castle sets. So it's got like references and features that were known from a bunch of the different castle themes growing up. And let me tell you, this set is just absolutely beautiful, has so many fun features, and was just super duper fun to bring to life. And especially if you loved castle stuff, like this just had everything you could possibly want. Every bell and whistle a Lego castle should have. Old school space stuff. I'm glad someone remembers that. The classic space minifigures are so cute. One little minifigure that they came out with recently, actually, that I really like is they've actually come out with little space babies. So this is like a tiny little version of those classic little space people, which is super duper awesome and really, really fun. And then I did want to highlight, I have a really cool Lego collection here. If you can believe it, I actually have over 725 different categories of parts. And I pretty much know where everything is in them. So anytime that I need certain pieces, I know exactly where to go to get it. And for anyone who might be curious about how I'm going about sorting my collection, I do a mix of what we call sort by part and sort by color. So you can see kind of right behind me here, I have a bunch of pieces sorted by color. So these are more of like your foundational blocks. So we have what are called plates here. Those are the thin ones with the little studs on top. And then I also typically have a category for like slopes and then bricks. And that makes it easy for me to find the bulk of what I need to bring up the larger portions of creations. But then for any of the smaller pieces that are going to be for more detailing purposes or more functional purposes, I typically sort by part. So you can see over here, I've got a bunch of them sorted by part. And then if I have too many of a part, I'll start to break them up into different color groups, which is why those are organized like that. But doing a mix of those, I find works really, really well. And in particular, the reason I like doing some stuff sorted by color is that when I'm building my own creations, which I do like to do a lot, even if I can't find the exact piece I was looking for to build something, I find that if I'm in a bin of similar parts, it's really easy to find something that I might be able to use instead of what I was looking for. So it'll help keep me building rather than needing to feel like, oh, I got to go order that part and wait weeks to finish the build. So yeah. And again, if you have any questions about the collection here, I will know I own over 1,250 sets, and I have over 1 million parts in my studio here, which I'm very, very lucky to have. And that's what like 28 years or so of collecting Lego sets will do to you. But yeah, it's just super duper fun getting to have access to so many pieces to build pretty much anything I want. And speaking of stuff that I enjoy building, I have some of my favorite builds right here. We'll actually start with this guy here, which is an Xbox Series X controller. I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit closer for this guy here. So if you have played an Xbox recently, these are what the controllers look like. This is what kind of comes with both the Series S and Series X of the console. And it was just really fun trying to capture all the details here, coming up with a fun little way to kind of create a little X there on the logo. But what I loved incorporating into the set in particular is a fun little surprise. Xbox controllers actually still use AA batteries. So I went ahead and incorporated a little area in the back here where you can actually have AA batteries that are, of course, built out of Lego as well, be able to insert and come out of the controller there. So that was a fun little kind of thing to hide within this build. And then my all-time favorite Lego build is this guy right here. It is my Lego Nintendo Switch. Hopefully some of you were wondering why I had a Nintendo Switch on my desk, but this is actually made out of Lego. And I'm really proud of the fact that this occasionally does fool people into thinking it is an actual Lego build. Or it is an actual Switch, not a Lego build. But yeah, this is one of my favorite builds. I spent about 20 to 25 hours on this creation. I actually built it live on stream, so it took me like 6 or 7 streams total to get it done. And what made this build take so long was not only trying to capture it really, really accurately, but have a lot of cool functions like the actual Nintendo Switch does. So just like you can with the Switch, you can actually slide the controllers out, the Joy-Cons, as they call them, slide right in and out and actually lock into place as well. So if I wanted to flip the build upside down, the controllers will stay, just like they would on the actual Switch. And you can do that with both sides as well. And then the Joy-Con holder has that same functionality. So if I wanted to change out for the gray controllers, put them on the Switch instead, I can do that and use this as my little holder. And then one of my other favorite features is you can't really have a Nintendo Switch without playing games on it. The games on the Switch are what make it so fun and so iconic. So of course, I actually built this sort of game cartridge thing where you can slide this out and go from having it turned off to turned on. And then I actually have a little scene of Minecraft built there. And the idea is you can actually swap out whatever scene you want in there. So if you wanted to build a Pokemon scene or a Mario scene or a Metroid scene, you can put any video game that you want inside here, as long as you can be creative enough to build a scene for it. And then to go with the Minecraft, I built, admittedly, this is sort of like a prototype, but it's supposed to be one of like the game boxes. So it's got like the clear edge in there. It's got the little, the rating on there, the little logo on the side. And then that's supposed to be like Steve, the main character there, built in a very blocky form, which is fitting for Minecraft anyways. So yeah, some fun builds there too. And then I have another build here, which might not quite look as interesting. Let me switch to the right camera here at first. But there's some really cool properties of Lego that people may not realize they have. So there's supposed to be like a little character exploring an interesting little cave. And you can see I've picked out some very particular colors here. And the reason for that is these colors actually have a very unique property to them. So I'm going to actually go ahead and start by turning off some lights in here. And give me just a second to get it nice and dark. so that you guys can really see what this build can do. And then if I go ahead and turn on a black light lamp, you'll see the build suddenly comes to life, and many of the different elements in this build have a really intense glow to them. So it just creates for this, really, really cool, unique build that allows you to have a completely different look when you're actually checking it out in the dark in black light. So it's really, really fun that at a lot of LEGO conventions these days, there will be a time called World of Lights where the convention hall will turn off all the actual lights in there. It gives people an opportunity to highlight their builds, either using actual lighting systems or by using black light to let certain aspects of their builds glow by picking up particular Lego bricks that do react to black light very strongly. So really, really fun kind of feature for those there. All right, and then I'm gonna get some lights back on here so we can continue to show you some of the other cool stuff that we've got in our setup here. So I actually have one Lego set I wanted to highlight here because I know you guys are gonna be getting your hands on the Nano Gauntlet, which is a super duper cool Marvel set. Really, really fun. I've actually built the original Infinity Gauntlet, which is like a very similar design, but in all gold. It's a really enjoyable build. You guys are going to love it. Dune, yes, Dune, exactly. So this is the Dune Ornithopter. And this set only has 1,300 pieces, but it is a very substantial size. And what I love about this build is the fact that it is like deceptively well engineered and designed to have some crazy cool functionality. So right now it's sort of in it's like, let's say nosedive mode. The landing gear's up or down, or no, it's up. It's up, and then the wings are folded in. But if I wanted to, let's say, land the ship, I can just turn a little dial here, and you'll see the landing gear will deploy and lock in. So if I can rest it on the table on its landing gear, and then if I want to take flight again, I can just turn that back and retract the landing gear. Amazing the way that that folds in and out. And as if that wasn't cool enough, you can actually fold out the wings as well. So if I pull on this little tab on the top, you'll see I get the full wingspan of the vehicle here. So it really looks like it's flying, but you know what? It's actually very static right now. So it really doesn't look like it's flying that much. So of course, somehow the brilliant designer that came up with the set figured out a way to actually have this little button here make the wings flap. So if you really want to have that like full swooshing plane feature, you can literally repeatedly press on this button here to get the wings to flap back and forth, really making it look like it flies in the movie, which is just crazy, crazy cool. So Lego sets, guys, let me tell you, they have such cool engineering features in them that just make them ridiculously, ridiculously fun. And then I have a few more of my favorite builds here. Hopefully we've got some Star Wars fans here because I did want to show you guys my Lego lightsaber. I will note this build does not light up. But what I love about this build is that it is engineered entirely using Lego. There's no glue, there's no metal, there's no wood inside. And this build is really, really strong. So I can actually take this and I can twirl it around. I can hold it sideways from the very end. And it has this sort of fun bonus feature where I can show you how it's built. So I go ahead and rest that down there. I can pull up on one of these layers here and it sort of peels back and bends. So I can show you how it's engineered on the inside. So this build, sort of the core is built up this way with traditional bricks. You can see some regular Lego bricks in there. But then we've got some other bricks in here that create spaces to build on all four sides. And these bricks are called snot bricks. It doesn't mean we're using boogers to stick them together. Snot stands for studs not on top. So it just means it has studs on the side in addition to the top. So it allows you to build in all four directions. And so by surrounding a bunch of these pieces with lots and lots of layers of plates and tiles around it, it creates this really, really strong core that runs through the entire build and gives it the strength to allow me to play with it like this. And then tying in just a little bit to the Marvel builds, and I will note, I built both of these models before Lego came out with their own official sets of these. So Lego's model of the Mjolnir, or Thor's hammer, is a little bit better than mine, but I was really, really proud of building this myself at the time. Once again, it uses the same technique through the arm here to give the strength, even though this head is very, very heavy, it's engineered to kind of hold all that weight there. It even has a little string here, which you can hold the whole build by, which is really, really fun. So love getting to build this. And I've actually used this on my stream as the band hammer. Sometimes we get silly people coming to the streams and we need to get rid of them. So I like to swing this as my band hammer to get rid of them when I need to. And then another favorite of mine is the Captain America shield. And what I love about this build is I actually built it when I used to work at the Lego store, and I built it using pieces that are only available from the wall at the back of the store. So I built this entirely in the store just with pieces that were available through that wall. So it was pretty tough working around a very limited selection, but this was a really, really fun build to have there for kids to kind of check out and play with and take pictures with at the store. And then I was really lucky that I got to take it home when I eventually ended up leaving. So yeah, super duper fun. And it is really strong. So it just uses a bunch of pieces stacked together here. There's no glue through any of this. It's just all like the friction of the pieces that are holding it together. So yeah, these are some of my fun builds. Hope you guys enjoyed exploring the collection a little bit. If you have any questions there, I feel like I saw people typing a few times. Don't be afraid to hop in. Let me know. Yeah, it's been so much fun getting to show this to you guys. So thank you so much.
Nick, that's some cool stuff. I was a little concerned you weren't going to throw any Star Wars in until you brought the lightsaber out.
Oh, no,
but I was happy to see that.
Yeah, of course.
That's cool. What are you working on right now, if I can ask?
You know what? Unfortunately, most of my ongoing projects are for clients right now, so I can't share any. Can't really share any in particular, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, I guess if we're curious, we can watch you on Twitch then, right?
Yes, exactly. I do live streaming when I'm bringing stuff to life, so you can definitely do that for sure.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing. We got a question. Is it considered blasphemy to ever use glue, or what do they call it in the Lego movie, crackle or something?
Craggle. They called it Craggle because it was like a crazy glue bottle with the other letters scratched out. So that's all they got left. I would not say blasphemy. I'm personally an advocate for not using glue. I will know I do have one glued build in here, and that is my Lego Masters trophy. They glued it for me. This is definitely a build I never want to fall apart or have to take apart or put together again. So there's obviously appropriate cases for when glue is necessary. But it is the only glued creation in my entire studio. It always makes me sad to think that like if I decided I didn't like a build one day, I wouldn't be able to take it apart if I glued it together. I think the magic of Lego is just its ability to become something else someday. So yeah, I always advise against it, but obviously there are certain scenarios where it may make sense. So, if you've got kids that are a little chaotic and always tearing your builds down, it might make sense to glue something so that you get to actually look at it on your shelf and not find a pile of pieces on the floor randomly in the middle of the night or something.
Yeah, that could be frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for your time, Nick. I know we're kind of at time here, so we'll wrap up. But again, if you have any questions about HPE or Azure Stack, Vista's here to help. If you have any questions about Legos, hit Nick up on Twitch because I can't really help you too much there. But in addition, everyone that's attending this as a customer should be able to see in their email box next 24 to 48 hours a link to get that Nano Gauntlet, which is the one with Iron Man after he's stolen from Thanos. So just make sure you don't snap those fingers together because half of us could disappear because of that. We don't want any of that in our life. And then also this recording is going to be available and we'll get that sent out to you as well. We do have some additional Vista Talk Tech follow-up that we have coming up here over the next couple months. We'll make sure to inform you about those as they come up. But we've enjoyed having you. Thanks for your time. We know your time is very valuable, and we're just thankful you chose to spend some of it with us. But have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.